Florida, the Sunshine State, is known for its beautiful beaches, weather, and tropical landscapes. Its economy is driven by tourism, especially in the coastal communities. However, residents and even the tourists who come to visit this paradise are becoming increasingly aware of the rising seas during the king tide season. King tides produce the highest tides of the year, causing flooding and concern for popular cities like Fort Lauderdale.
The king tides are creeping up year by year and impacting structures, seawalls, office buildings, downtown streets, which do impact everyone's day-to-day lives. In particular, during the last king tide, throughout the areas of Rio Vista and the Las Olas Isles, there were various barriers that were put up to try to minimize the flooding of the city of Fort Lauderdale streets. There are different valves and other systems that are put in place to try to keep the seawater that is coming in, that is filling the various drains, from maximizing their flow onto the streets, which ultimately flood different residences and buildings.
Because of the drastic rise of the king tides in Fort Lauderdale, the local municipalities had to take some action and propose a change in the existing seawall legislation.
What they changed was raising the minimum level of a required seawall. What the city did to accommodate those concerns is not requiring all the residents to go ahead and incur the expense right away. But what they are doing is, if you are proposing or requesting modifications or improvements to your seawall, then you have to raise the level. If your seawall is dilapidated or falling apart or permitting the intrusion of water, this city, through its code enforcement mechanism, will cite you, and from the date of the citation, you have a year to raise it to the required minimum.
As thousands of people move near Florida's coastal areas each year and the seas continue to rise, lawyers are beginning to look carefully at homeowners' rights.
Every person who purchases a home, whether it's a condominium or a residential real estate property, needs a real estate disclosure. We have different ways we can do that. We can do this through statutes and ordinances, or we can do it through what we call the common law, where cases are decided and tell you what the standard should be. But we need clear and direct disclosures for people to understand, like this property may be affected by sea level rise. You should, before you purchase the property, understand how vulnerable it is, if it is at all, and what can be done during the life of your anticipated tenancy in this property to adapt to it. We need to have a new psychology for developers. Developers who say, well, I'm going to build this building, I'm not going to put any extra money into it to make it as resilient as possible for sea level rise or raised roads and adapt to what we know is going to happen years from now, because I'm going to sell it and it's somebody else's problem. That needs to be, frankly, against the law, that type of thinking.
Community leaders are taking an aggressive approach to the issues surrounding sea level rise. Recently, Congressman Ted Deutsch spoke to the Broward County community to discuss new action plans. Colin Polsky, director of the Florida Center for Environmental Studies at Florida Atlantic University, is diligently working on an action plan.
Everybody I'm speaking with in the private sector here, in Broward County in particular, is convinced, it's implicit in our conversation, that there's a positive ROI. That is, it's worth the investment. So you drive up and down the coast here, you see crane after crane after crane, development. It can be done in a way that is resilient to the challenges that we face. So technologically speaking, legally speaking, as far as I can tell, this can be done. But a conversation needs to be had that brings together these sectors, because the solution is not resident in any one person or industry. In the year 2100, somebody's going to write a book. It'll be called the 21st Century Urban Adaptation Challenge or something like that. And there'll be case studies, and we're on pace, I think, here in Southeast Florida to be featured as one of the places that got it right, and it was among the first to get it right.
While we can't stop the seas from rising, what we can do is find solutions to protect our cities and our homes. In the process, communication and collaboration across different sectors and industries will be necessary to save our beautiful Sunshine State.